you haven't been able to tell by now, today's episode is taking a podcast route, and this is due to local construction works making far too much noise than what is necessary. So, here we are in audio delight. So, what was our first weekend like back playing league football? Well, certainly we all know the scoreline, but was the scoreline truly reflective of the match overall? I think, to a degree, yes, but it certainly fails to tell the entire story. So let's try and paint that broader picture. Now, the first half, certainly, it wasn't good by any measure, but it doesn't mean there wasn't any highlights from that first half. Now, given that our squad, at least our say 11, just under half, with five and full 11 playing the field at any regular time together, that being the core of our squad, particularly from last season, with lots of Lawson, Sandu, Pickett, Goff, Papasanis, all have had highly significant hours together, both as a team, both as a group, but most importantly, playing competitively together. So when you bring that all together, there isn't much helping us in terms of cohesion when, for the most part, we're still learning collectively how we all act and trying to get everything to link up. So, of course, there's going to be some teething issues. Now, from that alone, you may rightly point to our Night FC Cup fixture a fortnight ago. However, it wasn't like our opposition was in the same league as ourselves, wasn't just a division below. There was a few divisions between us and Waverley. So to rely on that as a fair comparison is unhelpful at best. But what is helpful is knowing where we did things right in the first half. Now, there were certainly places where I think we're doing quite well. We're being able to bring the ball up the wing, particularly on the left wing, which is looking quite strong at times, but also on the right. Getting the balls out to Lawson, getting the balls out to Goff. Both of which are very, very key in how we play and how we're going to be successful this year. Because these are two fantastic footballers who are worth their salt. And they certainly had very strong support with them. Notably Pickett, who, as well as playing times a small centre forward role, times just a general striker, even at times pulling back to becoming more of a cam. Her positional flexibility in helping secure our control of the midfield, where we could control the midfield, both in the first and second half, was very much key and will play a great role in future fixtures where we are firmly built up together and we've got that absolute squad cohesion which we really need and which we are certainly building upon. Now that pretty much covers things for the first half, pointing out the key players that certainly made the greatest impact. Though, that is certainly not the full picture of that. In terms of consistency as well, it lies Sandu, who, while perhaps doesn't get as much credit she deserves, certainly played a strong role in midfield. Also had our recent signing of Jenna Farrow in goals, who despite having not the best day in the office in the first half, was certainly consistent. And when it comes to playing good quality football, consistency is key. And while she certainly didn't have the best cards thrown towards her, often being left on her own at times, which is certainly where we seem to concede it, where the defence just wasn't quite linking up with our goals. Farrow certainly did a tremendous amount to ensure we didn't concede more than what was apparently necessary. And those 3 goals were truly necessary. One final point to cover for the first half as well, as we saw the formal introduction of our 2 A-League signings, that being Tiara McKenna, who was playing more or less in a central midfield role. Wasn't quite sure if she went at the wing bit into the fence, but she was definitely playing in the centre of the pitch. So she was, and she is going to be one of those players to watch out for, where we're building up play and you see, alright, this is where we're going to take things forward from. And without a doubt, I think as she continues to coalesce the players around her, she, alongside the likes of Sandu, are certainly going to do very well for us in future fixtures. And it certainly seemed to get things quite well together in the second half. So that's quite well. In addition to the presence of McKenna, we also saw the full playing instruction of Francesca Iramo. Now, she was teaming up quite strongly with Goff and was making that impact up the wing, which is where I think we played best and where we show the most promise, the most excitement. And it's something I think as fans we'd like to see. Strong, exciting football. Now beyond that, that pretty much covers the first half. As for the second, well, whatever the gaffer said during his half-time talk certainly made an impact, a quite significant one. We looked like a very different side in the first half. We were a very different side in the first half. We had somehow managed to get enough of the pieces together to say, alright, I know what you're expecting, I know what you're expecting, I know what you're expecting. I can deliver a good bulk of that. So yes, there's going to be things we need to keep working on, but for the most part, I'm with you. And I think that is a fair reflection of the second half. For the most part, I'm with you. And that certainly says most of it for the second half. We had far more chances in the first half. The first half, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like we had no efforts. There were balls in where we looked promising. The second half, we had far more of them. So it certainly seems like something had clicked and we're starting to get somewhere with our game, starting to play our way a bit more. But in the end, not much more can be said for that. Just a far more cohesive playing by our team. One thing we certainly do want to make note of was the absolute beating Sandu took in the second half, where she was taken out quite strongly, quite firmly, and the fact that she's able to get back up pretty much straight away and just carry on, certainly a strong commendation of her abilities and her resilience as a player. And given her efforts both in the first and second half, you can see why she's our captain for 2022. Beyond that, again, a few good shots on goal, less attempts, getting up. Lawson was looking fantastic. Pickett was looking fantastic. Goff was looking fantastic. Romano was doing very well, helping get the ball pushed up into the areas we needed. But most importantly, which came to us, is down to what made a UCA winner in such a mixed feeling fixture. In the end, it was consistency. After all, consistency is what builds good football. And it was consistency and resilience from our backline in Gemma Farrow, which led to her being our inaugural UCA winner for this campaign. So then, on that note, let's take a quick look around the grounds. Now, given the shape of round one overall, I think this round has certainly proven quite a few surprises, especially to the sides you expect to be consistently competing for final positions. So first of all, on the Friday nights we had Box Hill hosting Calder. Now this was a match where I think it was very frustrating for the Calder faithful. While they were very dominant throughout both halves, I just couldn't seem to get their act together where it mattered most, that being more or less right in front of goals. Now, while certainly stronger than their Box Hill opposition, particularly quite physically stronger, as the Toronto sisters and Sinclair certainly demonstrated the most, it seems that physicality wasn't going to be the way to get the result in this match. That's how it turned out. As for Box Hill, while they certainly had a number of periods of possessional dominance, they were either not quite getting it to the final third or losing it near goals where I think they certainly could have gotten the goal to win the match. In the end, that ended up coming a 0-0 draw. Certainly, on psychological standings, I would have said it would have been a win for Box Hill and very firmly a loss for Calder. The other Saturday fixture saw Heidelberg hosting Bayside up at the Village. Now Heidelberg were certainly firm victors, going on to win 5-1. A very strong game, particularly for Galea, who certainly, as we all know, is one of those players in the league who has dominated season after season after season and is always one to watch from a defensive standpoint. She went on to get a hat-trick, which is certainly a good way to start off your campaign. Beyond that, not much more to mention, aside from former South Melbourne players in Julie Buliongo and Miriam Anvari getting on their new squad, with Anvari making the impact for Bayside. Moving on, we had the final fixture, which was on Sunday, which we saw FE Emerging host Alamein. Now, Emerging would go on to win 2-0, which in other ways is quite surprising. Surprising given the history of Emerging as being one of those sides where typically, more often than not, they're the ones who are going to get beaten, they're going to get thrown around a bit. Certainly not the case last season, and if last Sunday's game is anything to go by, this season as well will not be the case for that either. It seems like Helen Winterburg's side has been able to bring together a very strong squad for 2022 as well as they have for 2021. Whereas since that summer period has now transpired, they've lost a number of very talented footballers, a number of which we've signed. Now, overall game, I would say both sides certainly had their periods of dominance. Emerging, looking quite good at times, but Alamein seemed the strongest side on the counter. And they were very, very close quite often to scoring. In fact, how Alamein didn't manage to score, I think is one of the greatest surprises from that game, considering how strong their offensive position was. However, it was certainly Emerging who were able to make the best of circumstances, and when they got in to the final third in the box, they were certainly the most consistent in terms of just getting the ball where they wanted it to, not necessarily in terms of getting the goal, but being on target. They certainly seemed more organised in that regard. And I think if they're able to keep this up, I'm sure Emerging will continue to keep this up. It's until Winterburn side are finally broken, if they get broken. I certainly have very few doubts, very few reservations that we won't be seeing them compete for finals, that we won't be seeing them in a final, which would be for the first time in their club's history being within a WNPL Finals series. And on that note, that pretty much covers it all for round one of this opening 2022 season. And so we look ahead to this weekend's fixtures around the grounds. Now, Saturday in 3 up at Keilor Park, Calder will be hosting FV Emerging. This is certainly going to be a game to look back on, at least once you've gone home watching the South later on that afternoon. Calder certainly have much to prove from their arguable psychological defeat at Box Hill. Emerging have to show that not only can they compete at home, they can compete away. Certainly a very strong test for both sides, one which I think will come to dictate the flow of the season come a few more rounds' time when things are certainly more settled out. Otherwise, we will be away to Bayside at Kingston Heath. That is from 3:30. So just during the state, Calder, 3 o'clock. Bayside versus South Melbourne, 3:30. Otherwise, on the Sunday, we will see Alamein versus Heidelberg. Again, another one of those big games where Alamein got to prove that, yes, they might have lost last weekend. This weekend, they can prove that they can get the result, that they can score when they need to. Heidelberg, it's very much the match to prove they continue their place in the WNPL. If they can win again this weekend, they are effectively 6 points clear of a key opposition team. They could potentially be 3 points clear of most of the opposition. So it's very much how can they get themselves ahead even further. Otherwise, Bulleen will be hosting Box Hill United at Sunday as well, from 7:30 at the Veneto Club. Quite unusual seeing Bulleen at home on a Sunday night, as it is very much a Sunday night fixture. Again, certainly another one of those games where it's going to be quite interesting to watch, see how both sides play. I suppose it's certainly not helped given the size of the league, but this year is certainly set for one of a few surprises and magic all round. And so until this Saturday, until this Sunday, we're going to have to wait and see. Otherwise, until then, we have been your LAS Fan TV, kicking you off for another campaign. Come on, Hellas.